All right, there we go. All right, so an evening of poetry and pipe at the Thomas St. Angelo Public Library. I'm going to be reading two poems. The first one is called In the Company of Women, and it's by January O'Neill. Make me laugh over coffee. Make it a double, make it frothy, so it seethes in our delight. Make my cup overflow with your small happiness. I want to hoot and snort and cackle and chuckle. Let your laughter fill me like a bell. Let me listen to you ringing and singing as Billie Holiday croons above our heads. But sorry, the blues are nowhere to be found. Not tonight, not here. No makeup, no tears, only contours, only curves. Each sip takes back a pound. Each dry roasted swirl takes our soul. Can I have a refill? Just one more? Let the bitterness sink to the bottom of our lives. Let us take this joy to go. Reminded me of some of my girlfriends. The next one I'm going to read is called Fear by Khalil Gibran. And I don't know about, and some of you are in my same age category, remember him and his book, The Prophet, from eons ago. And I didn't realize that he was originally from Lebanon and moved here to the States when he was 12. And then went back to Lebanon for college and then settled in New York and then Boston. But he lived from 1883 to 1931, but this poem just really struck me, especially with our theme of oceans of possibilities. And so I hope you'll think about that as I read this. Fear. It is said that before entering the sea, a river trembles with fear. She looks back at the path she has traveled, from the peaks of the mountains, the long winding road crossing forests and villages. And in front of her, she sees an ocean so vast that to enter, there seems nothing more than to disappear forever. But there's no way back. There's no other way. The river cannot go back. Nobody can go back. To go back is impossible in existence. The river needs to take the risk of entering the ocean, because only then will fear disappear. Because that's where the river will know it's not about disappearing into the ocean, but of becoming the ocean. So thank you all again for being here. And tonight, now we'll have Levi read My Shadow. And if you want to tell us, Levi, why you chose this particular poem too, we'd be interested in that. I'll hand you the mic.
The reason I chose My Shel, well, one reason is because I've read it before and I learned all about Robert Louis Stevenson's life. He had a very interesting life. And it just sort of felt good. So that's why. It's My Shadow by Robert Louis Stevenson. I have a little shadow that goes in and out with me. And what could be the use of him more than I can see? He's very, very like me, from his head, heels up to his head. And I see him jump before me when I jump into my bed. The funniest thing about him is the way he likes to grow. Not like a proper child, which is very, very slow. For sometimes he's tall like a Indian rubber ball. And sometimes he gets so little that there's none of him at all. He hasn't got a notion of how children ought to play. And he can only make a fool of me in every sort of way. He stays so close beside me, he's a coward, you could see. I think it's a shame to stick to my nursery that the shadow sticks to me. One morning very early before the sun was up, I rose and found a shiny dew on every buttercup, but my lazy little shadow, like an errant sleepyhead, had stayed home and behind me and was fast asleep in bed.
Thank you. Very nice.
I'm doing,
Hi.
Shock on.
You're fine. Oh,
I'm doing, I have a little turtle by Rachel Lindsay. I have a little turtle, lives in a box. He swims in a puddle and he climbs on a rock. He snaps at a mosquito, he snaps at a flea, he snaps at a minnow, and he snaps at me. He catches that mosquito, he catches that flea, got that minnow, but he didn't catch me.
Pretty tough following a couple of kids. So I'm going to read Utopian by Alicia Osterberg. And this was a poem in your packet from the library last year. And I've had it on my fridge ever since. My neighbor's daughter has created a city you cannot see, on an island to which you cannot swim, ruled by a noble princess and her athletic consort. All the buildings are glass, so that lies are impossible. Beneath the city, they have buried certain words which can never be spoken again. Chiefly the word divorce, which is eaten by maggots. When it rains, you hear chimes. Rabbits race through its suburbs. The name of the city is one you can almost pronounce. This is a poem I wrote that actually I wrote it before Easter. And the inspiration came from a visitation handout for Jack Peterson, who is a Spanish teacher here in Cumberland many, many years ago. So I titled this, My Thoughts About the Coming Growing Season. As the earth warms and the days lengthen, I am 100% sure I'll be expending all my waking hours and energy into garden work. I'll dig about my perennials, plant annuals, and try to make them happy. My hope is that they will have a good short life or endure long after me. When the nourishing rains roll in, I will relax in my favorite porch and enjoy the backyard landscape. This will be a time of reflection to make additional plans for the growing season and remember good friends and pets who have passed away. I'll enjoy the birds, the butterflies, and bees who come hovering to visit and rely upon my gardens for sustenance to satisfy their needs. Later in the summer, I will anticipate the return of hummingbirds and monarchs who know where I live. Then as I watch and wait, perhaps a friend or two, lovers of flowers, birds, butterflies, fresh air, and sunshine will come. We will walk along my garden paths and talk of present and future plans. We will reflect upon past memories of adventures that enriched our lives. Perhaps this may be my last growing season for all I know, but what a temptation to spend it so.
I'm Susan Bridger, and I was in another life, I feel like I've had these different lives and jobs, and I was a sixth grade teacher for 34 years, and I certainly read my share of poetry to sixth graders, and one of their favorites was always Shel Silverstein. And A Light in the Attic was, I believe it's his first poetry book. And it was very hard for me to choose my favorite, but this is definitely one. Well, actually, I picked three, but this is definitely one that I enjoyed. And we talked about what the meaning behind it could possibly be. The Oak and the Rose by Shel Silverstein. An oak tree and a rose bush grew young and green together, talking the talk of growing things, wind and water and weather. And while the rose bush sweetly bloomed, the oak tree grew so high that now it spoke of newer things, eagles, mountain peaks, and sky. I guess you think you're pretty great, the rose was heard to cry, screaming as loud as it possibly could to the treetop in the sky. And you have no time for flower talk now that you've grown so tall. It's not so much that I've grown, said the tree. It's just that you stayed so small. Okay, now, the next one I think of in August. And I, right now, would feel real good if this is how it was. It's called It's Hot. And sometimes you feel this way, I think. It's hot. I can't get cool. I've drunk a quart of lemonade. I think I'll take my shoes off and sit around in the shade. It's hot. My back is sticky. The sweat rolls down my chin. I think I'll take my clothes off and sit around in my skin. It's hot. I've tried with electric fans and pools and ice cream cones. I think I'll take my skin off and sit around in my bones. It's still hot. And I love the picture. A skeleton is sitting there. And then just one more little one. And the older I get, well, I don't feel quite this old, but it's called The Little Boy and the Old Man. Said the little boy, sometimes I drop my spoon. Said the little old man, I do that too. The little boy whispered, I wet my pants. I do that too, laughed the little old man. Said the little boy, I often cry. The old man nodded, so do I. But worst of all, said the boy, it seems grown-ups don't pay attention to me. And he felt the warmth of a wrinkled old hand. I know what you mean, said the little old man.
Yeah. Hi, I'm David Picacio, and I am honored this evening to be with you and to share the poem by Amanda Gorman, The Hill We Climb. So I'd like to read the foreword that was written by Oprah Winfrey. They don't come very often, these moments of incandescence, where the welter of pain and suffering gives way to hope, maybe even joy, where deep distress that has dogged our souls and shaken our faith, so difficult to articulate and even harder to bear, is transformed into something clear and pure, where wisdom flows in cadences that sync with the thrum of our blood, the beat of our hearts, where grace and peace in human form take the measure, seeing where we've been and where we must go, lighting the way with her words. She was exactly what we've been waiting for, this skinny Black girl descended from slaves, showing us our true selves, our human heritage, our heart. Everyone who watched came away enhanced with hope and marveling at seeing the best of who we are and can be through the eyes and essence of a 22-year-old, our country's youngest presidential inaugural poet. As her words washed over us, they healed our wounds and resurrected our spirits. A nation bruised but whole climbed up off its knees. And finally, a miracle. We felt the sun pierce the never-ending shade. That is the power of poetry. And that is the power we collectively witnessed at the inauguration of President Joseph R. Biden on January 20th, 2021. The day Amanda Gorman, profoundly presenting her fullest, most radiant self, rose to the microphone and the moment, giving us the gift of the hill we climb. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just is isn't always justice. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny Black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother, can dream of becoming president only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but this doesn't mean we're striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose. To compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. So we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so that each can reach our arms out to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true, that even as we grieved, we grew. That even as we hurt, we hoped. That even as we tired, we tried. That we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that. Everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised blade, the hill we climb, if we dare do it. Because being American is more than the pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than to share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith, we trust. For while we have our eyes on the future, History has its eyes on us. This is an era of just redemption. We feared it as its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it, we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So while once we asked, how could we have possibly prevail over this catastrophe? Now we assert, how could a catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be. A country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their blunders, but one thing is certain: if we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from our bronze-pounded chests, we will raise this wounded world into a wonder swan. We will rise from the gold-lined hills of the West, and we will rise from the windswept Northeast where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people diverse and dutiful, we emerge battered but beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it.
My name is Victoria Brenna, and I'm a writer from Turtle Lake. Well, soon it will be Mother's Day, my second one since losing my mom's physical presence, and a decade of Mother's Days since losing her to dementia. These are two short poems I wrote about mothers. The first, Where is Home, is a haibun, a short unrhymed composition followed by a haiku. The second, The Women Who've Mothered Me, is a prose poem. Where is home? Frontal temporal dementia cratered the creases of my mother's brain, devouring her inhibitions, robbing her of vocabulary, stealing her slowly from us. When agitation and confusion propelled her to wander from home in search of home, my father walked beside her quietly, waiting for her brain to reset. Home was where he was. She had calm sanctuary within his aura. The women who've mothered me. Women hold me in their gossamer cloud of care. A woman gave me her house coat, a ready hug when my mother died. My high school girlfriend let me tongue lash my husband to his mistress. Women share brownies, grandkids' photos, a glass of cheer. My mother handed down her jewelry, clothes, and wisdom. When a friend admonished, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, I stopped bashing my head against a wall of why. Women whisked me to dancing, a movie out for a bite, or a chat with tea. A friend since birth helps me downsize, calls her plumber on a Sunday to bail me out. My granddaughters reflect to me my grandmothers. This moment is all we have. In a support group parking lot, a woman mirrors acceptance to me, a stranger. Women understand friendships, marriage, a life worth living, need garden tending. My daughter reminds me not to solve, only to hold and hear her. When I agreed to one too many projects, a woman brought me home. Countless women reach out, I'm here for you, or hey, let's go celebrate. Women recognize the fleetingness of newness, the roller coaster of reality. I am held aloft and anchored secure by women who've mothered me.
I am Carol Halverson. I am going to read a poem also by Amanda Gorman. David introduced you to her. She's a marvelous woman, 22 years old, and is a poet laureate in America. The poem I'm going to read, she did for the 55th Super Bowl, this last Super Bowl. You probably saw her do that. And poem is titled Chorus of the Captains. And it is honoring the people who, during the 2 years of the pandemic and on, were champions. And so she titled it Chorus of the Captains. Today we honor our three captains for their actions and impact in a time of uncertainty and need. They've taken the lead, exceeding all expectations and limitations, uplifting their communities and neighbors as leaders, healers, and educators. James has felt the wounds of warfare, but this warrior still shares his home with at-risk kids. During COVID, he has even lent a hand live streaming football for family and fans. Triamine is an educator who works nonstop, providing his community with hotspots, laptops, and tech workshops so his students have all the tools they need to succeed in life and in schools. Susie is the ICU nurse manager at a Tampa hospital. Her chronicles prove that even in tragedy, hope is possible. She lost her grandmothers to the pandemic and fights to save others' lives in the ICU battle zone, defining the front line, heroes risking their lives for our own. Let us walk with these warriors, charge on with these champions, and carry forth the call of our captains. We celebrate them by acting with courage and compassion, by doing what is right and just. And I'm sure that all of you have done some of that. And now, because that was pretty heavy stuff, and the last 2 years have been pretty heavy and isolating, I thought we needed some frivolity. I was a second grade teacher, and one of their favorite poets was Shel Silverstein. This was their favorite. We read it almost every day. I'm being eaten by a boa constrictor. A boa constrictor? A boa constrictor. I'm being eaten by a boa constrictor, and I don't like it one bit. What do you know? It's nibbling my toes. Oh, gee, it's up to my knee. Oh, fiddle, it's up to my middle. Oh, heck. It's up to my neck. Oh, dread, it's Then another one I think is very good advice for all of us. It's called the mustn'ts. Listen to the mustn'ts, child. Listen to the don'ts. Listen to the shouldn'ts, the impossibles, the won'ts. Listen to the never haves. Then listen close to me. Anything can happen, child. Anything can be.
Okay, and now we're going to listen to Sandra.
Hi, Jeanette. Can you guys hear me okay?
Can you hear her at all?
Talk some more, Sandra.
Okay, I am here in virtual land. Thank you for inviting me. I'm also very honored to be here today. So is it coming through okay to you guys?
Yes.
Okay, so I have two very special poems and poets today. The first poem I'm about to read is so special to me. It's been hanging on my wall for a very long time because it was illustrated by my grandma D'Amico. And I'm guessing some of you in the room knew my grandma Dee. She was on the library board for a while. Our family's been really excited to support and be part of the library over the years, 4 generations. She illustrated it in 1926 when she was in normal school at River Falls, which is River Falls University today. She was 18 years old. It's Home by Henry Van Dyke, and he's an American poet. And for those of you that can see the computer or on the computer, behind me is her illustration. I read within a poet's book a word that starred the page. Stone walls do not a prison make, nor iron bars a cage. Yes, that is true, and something more you'll find where'er you roam, that marble floors and gilded halls can never make a home. But every house where love abides and friendship is a guest is surely home, and home sweet home, for there the heart can rest. I love that poem because I loved being at my Grandma Dee's house. And she taught me a lot of things, that it's not about the house, it's about the love. So my second poem, I am going to put my video, stop my video so you can see the cover of the book. It's from the book Heart Songs by the young poet Maddie Stepanek. And some of you may remember this really cute, young, vibrant little boy. He was a favorite of my mom. She gave me this book, and he was also a favorite of Oprah's. She had him on his show many times. He was young and he was very ill and gone too soon. And he probably wrote this poem somewhere around the age of 10. So think about that when I'm reading it, what his voice might sound like and how he came up with these words. The name of the poem is Making Real Sense of the Senses. Our eyes are for looking at things, but they're also for crying when we are very happy or very sad. Our ears are for listening, but so are our hearts. Our noses are for smelling food, but also the wind and the grass, and if we try very hard, butterflies. Our hands are for feeling, but also for hugging and touching so gently. Our mouths and tongues are for tasting, but also for saying words like, I love you, and thank you, God, for all of these things. So I don't know if any of you remember Maddie, but that was the end of my second poem. Thank you for having me.
Hi, I'm Diana Picacio, and I'm going to read a poem that has no title and no author. And it was shared in my yoga class, Pam Baker, and I asked her if she wouldn't mind if I didn't share it with our group tonight. So here we go. I do not define myself by how many roadblocks have appeared in my path. I define myself by the courage I have found to forge new roads. I do not define myself by how many disappointments I have faced. I define myself by the forgiveness and faith I have found to begin again. I do not define myself by how long a relationship lasted. I define myself by how I have loved and have been willing to love again, and how I still love. I do not define myself by how many times I have been knocked down. I define myself by how many times I have struggled to my feet. I do not define myself by how often I have appeared a fool.
I define myself by the number of risks I have taken. I do not define myself by the number of mistakes I have made. I define myself by the knowledge I have learned from trying a new way. I am not my pain. I am not my past. I am that which has emerged from the fire.
Okay, thank you, everyone, for reading all those beautiful words. Really appreciate you being here tonight. We are to the pie portion of poetry and pie. So I will be drawing 6 names, and then we've got the pies back here on the table. If you're joining us via Zoom, we'll have to make some arrangements later for you to pick them up, but they all look delicious. They're from the 20 Mile store in Marinette.
Did everyone get an entry? David, I put one in for you.
And I wonder, we do have some people that are like multiple people from one family. We only have 6 pies. Maybe we should make a rule that only get one per family. First pie, Erica Strickland. So go choose what pie you would like. And okay, next, let's see. Rhonda. Oh, another game. Sorry about that. Victoria, yeah. Kristen. So Kristen, oh, she must be on
Yep.
Zoom. Okay, Kristen, we'll get connected to you later and figure out how we'll get that to you. Sandy Capra. And the last one.
She's clapping.
She's clapping. Okay. Nathan. Is that one?
He's also on Zoom.
On Zoom too, okay. Well, congratulations to the winners. And we also have here a basket that has 2 poems that are wrapped up for you to take home, because this is the National Poem in Your Pocket Day. And we'd like you to take those home with you, and maybe like Joan, you'll enjoy it for the whole next coming year. That's quite a testimony. Thank you for that, Joan. So thank you all again for joining us and making this a part of our national celebration for poetry. Love you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks
you
for
for
the
having
pie.
us online.
Thank you for the invite and thanks for the pie.
Nathan, your mom's still in Rice Lake. I could bring her your pie.
That would be perfect. Mother's Day.
Yes. Kristen,
All
I
right.
will figure out what to do with your pie.
You can use my pie. You can give it away.
Thank you.
Bye, Sandy. It was nice seeing you virtually.
Bye, friends online. Thanks, Chrisanne. Thanks, Jeanette.
Yeah, good to see you.
So fun. Lots of my friends got to join. So thank you. What a wonderful time.
Yes, good time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.